Okay, we were discussing what do you do with extra kachim, extra shkalim, which have a din of kachim kedoshim, extra of the kohen gadol, the minchas chavitin, extra kinei zav, and they had funds that they would use for these specific kabbanis. What would you do with the extras? So we said that anything that was a chatas or asham, any extra would be l'nedava. Again, as we spoke out many times, the nedava is the time when the mizbeach is slow, the case of mizbeach, and we go ahead and we use that as a pushka that said l'nedava, they would bring carbon oilers at that time. So the Mishnah concluded that the moisa of money collected for nazirim, right, is l'nazirim. However, for a specific nazir, it's a nedava. So the Gemara is going to discuss that. Specific nazir is the nedava to facilitate understanding. The nazir on the day when he completed his naziris would bring 3 kabbanis. He would bring a chatas, an oila, and a shlamim. So we say that the moiser of a nazir is nedava. That's what we say. Moiser nedava. So we're going to pick it up right at the bottom of Vav Amid Beis, the last few words. Moiser nazir nedava. Says Rav Chisda, I'm going to qualify that. Rav Chisda Amar Amid Aleph, v'hu shekirva chatasa b'soif. In other words, he bought his oila, he bought his shlamim, and he's bringing his chatas in the end. So then, if he has extra money, it gets a din of an extra chatas. As the Mishnah said, an extra chatas, anything that's a chatas is an asham, automatically is an adava. So Rav Chisda is learning pshat, really be'emes, a nazir, it's not nil-nadava. It's the chatas aspect of the nazir that makes it an adava, because you're bringing it last. That's Rav Chisda's din. V'hu shekirva chatasa b'soif. Avali kirvu shlamim b'soif. Let's say he bought a shlamim in the end, then it doesn't have the din of an asham or a chatas. Then moisra and shlamim, the extra funds would be a shlamim. So in other words, Rav Chisda is saying the din of the Mishnah when it said moisa nazirim, it really is an extension of the previous psak of anything that's a chatas and asham becomes automatically linedava. Amr Rav Zira disagrees. Afilu kirvu shlamim b'soif halachihi b'nazar shetei museres nedava. It's halacha by nazar, halacha l'mash misinai, no matter what. Even if you bring the shlamim at the end and the chatas in the beginning, it doesn't make a difference. It's a unique din in and of itself. It's not an extension of the din of chatas like Rabbi Chisda learns. It's a din halacha l'mash misinai in nazir. The nazir halacha l'mash misinai in nazir is it always goes l'nedava. Masnita Messiah Ledain, we have a brisa that's a raya to Reb Zeira. Umasnita Messiah Ledain, and we have a brisa that's a raya to who? To Rav Chisda. Either way, both sides of the fence. Masnita Messiah Reb Zeira, who says even if the shlamim in the end it becomes an adava, nothing to do with the din of chatas. Elohein mois stumim. Mois stumim. There's the difference between mois stumim and mois mefurashim. Stumim means a stam. What's mois stumim? That it goes to an adava. Kol shet mechatos, take out the word meisais. Kol shet mechatos muravais behen. It has the worth of chatas in it. It's speaking about a nazir who sets aside his money. He dies, and even the value of the chatas is in there. And guys, here's the key. We know halacha meish misinai that chatas shemesa ba'alecha, the chatas dies. We had a Gemara in Tamura. It's a Mishnah in Tamura. We said it many times. There are 5 chatas that die, right? And one of them is chatas shemesa ba'aleha. So over here, the nazir, you can look, he's the Baal. L'chayra, the money, I could say, the money should go to the Yam HaMelech. You should throw it into the Yam HaMelech. After all, he's dead. So the money should be parallel to the animal. Just like the animal's going to die, the money also should kaviyachol die. You throw it in the Yam HaMelech. No, that's not the din. The din is that what? Is kol shmei chatas meisas murasen va'afilu hifish shmei chatas mitoicha. Even if you take the money of the chatas, stumim hein, it's stumim, and they go in the dava. That's a clear raya to Rav Zeira. No matter where the chatas is, not at the end, the beginning, the end. As long as you clarify it, it's still going to be stumim wherever it is, and it'll be go in the dava. Masnisa Messiah Rav Chisda, who says only the chatas has to be in the end. Elul chatas, a guy takes money, he says this should be for my korban chatas, v'ashar l'shar nezirusi, and the rest should be for my rest of the naziris. In other words, he separated the chatas of the naziris, and the others, the money should be for the shlamim and the oila, umeis, and he dies. Moilin bekulan vein moilin b'miktsasa. Now, the halacha is the din of meila is only in the korban oila. We know that the Gemara in Baba Kama tells us that kachim kalim is mamin bailim. So guys, look at me. You have three. He has three animals. He has a chatas, an oila, and a shlamim. He took his chatas, the kachim kedoshim, he put it over here. You got two animals now. This money is for the oila and the shlamim. So now, part of it is a dinam ila, part of it is no dinam ila. The oila part is a dinam ila, the shlamim part is no dinam ila. So therefore, it says the following. If you use the whole money, there's a dinam ila, because you clearly use the oila part. Because maybe it's the shlamim part. Good. Here's the raya to Rav Chisda. Right? We don't say if he dies that it goes to Nidava. Rav Chisda Amar we don't say if he dies it goes to Nidava because it's not. So the loy nechshvu, it's not considered right after he dies like an extra chatas that it should fall in the dava. That was Rav Chisda's din. Rav Chisda's din was what that a chatas does not fall in it falls in the dava. He's saying over here, v'loy amar and may siflu nedava. Why? Because it's not a chatas. Because you don't have the value of the chatas in there. That was Rav Chisda's din. The Rav Chisda's din was that what only when you say it goes to nedava is when the chatas is less. Over here you don't have the chatas. It's separate. Light Reb's era. It's Allah Sinai. Guys, if he dies, this extra money, the oila part and the shlamim part is going in the dava. That's the Allah Sinai. But over here we say it doesn't go in the dava. That's the right of Chisda. Only goes in the dava when the chatas is last. But you separated the chatas. The only money you have now is an oila and a shlamim. Like Reb Zira, it would go what? Linadava. Why? It's Allah Sinai. It goes Linadava. Like Reb Chisda, not. It's the right to Reb Chisda. Okay, now the Nazir brought accompanying. He brought like two types of wafers. He'd bring with his animal, right? So now, what's the following? Let's say you have extra money for the animal. What do you do with extra money set aside for these breads? They're both. In fact, they're not breads. They are wafers. They are not chametz. But what will you do with them? So Rav Chisda Amar Meiser Lachmoi Shel Nazir. If you have money that's extra money for the Nazir, Yurkev, let it rot. So Rabbi Yossi v'Yoyis, that he said very good. Yoyis means very good. Shalmi terms Yoyis means et kusag say it good. What are you going to do with this? To bring it itself as a carbon, ain't at yachol, you can't bring it. There's no such thing as what? As a lechem of a nazir by itself. There's no such animal, excuse the pun. There's no such bread. It doesn't exist. However, now, what are you going to do? Let's attach it to another carbon. 1 second. He already is bringing other lechem there. Ein at yachol, you can't attach it to the other carbon. She'ein lecha naziris ba b'lei lechem. No naziris comes without lechem. So you don't have a double lechem. You can't be moist to lechem. So what are you going to do with this? So obviously you can't do anything with it, and therefore the halacha is what it is going to be. You have to let it rot. You let it. From kach tzarich meima moist lachme shel nazir yukov. So Rabbi Sefer said, Rabbi Chisda said very good. Sfira meima hu lachmoi hu moist in the sacham. Now they held to say, listen, the same halacha that you said by moist lachmoi that it goes to rat, so to moist in the sacham. Kabbanis had accompanying them, many kabbanis, not all, but most kabbanis had a carbon sachim that accompanied them, right? The Revi'as Ahin, by the oilus tamid, you had flour and oil. They accompanied it. Let's say you set aside money for the sachim. What do you do with the extra money? So they held to say, just like the lechem of a nazir is gone, so too the money that was for the sachim is gone. Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Boon, that's a very famous Yerushalmi name, Boon, right? Like in Daniel. Mois in the sachav is kachei kedashim. Mois kedashim is kachei kedashim inu v'yiplu nedava. Kachei kedashim goes to nedava. That's a good rule to know. If it's extra money for kachei kedashim, it's going to go for kachei kedashim because the nedava is always going to be an oila, so you're always going to bring it as a carbon. Al daite Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Boon. Al liba Rabbi Chisda. B'mois in the sachim. Now, Shmuel and Rav Chisda, according to that opinion, therefore, Shmuel and Rav Chisda and Rabbi Laza, they're all going to say the same thing. They're all going to say that the that Meiser Kachim Kadashim goes Linadava. Where do we see it? Rav Chisda Hodamar, and Rav Chisda we just said, he said literally Meiser Nesachim is considered Kachim Kalim, Kachim Kadashim, and therefore it's going to go Linadava. Shmuel Dam Rav Yossi Ad Ontayman Shminis Call Rabbi Yehuda Shal Shmuel until you don't listen to the voice of Rabbi Shmuel. Yehuda, listen to Shmuel. Hifish Shikla Yumeis. If a person sets aside his shkalim and he dies, Amalei, what's the din? Yipul Dava. Why? Because shkalim have a din of kachik kadashim, therefore Yipul Dava. Rabbi Lazar Aimer, Moisa Sirus Eifa, that Sirus Eifa of the chavitim of the Kohen Gadol, Shaloi, Rabbi Yochanan Nama Yaluchim Yalamelach, you bring it to the Yamamelach, you can't use it. Rabbi Lazar Aimer, Yipul Dava. So we have three people of Chisda, and according to Shmuel, and Rabbi Lazar, and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Chisda, Rabbi Lazar, and Rabbi Chisda, Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Lazar. Yiflin Adava. Says the Mishnah. Ma'aseh shvuyin l'shvuyin. You collect money for pidyon shvuyin, guys, right? What do you do with it? It goes into the pot for future shvuyin. Ma'aseh shavui, right? But you connect for a specific captive. Then ma'aseh shavui, right? Anything that's extra, it goes to that captive. Ma'aseh aniyim, you collect tzedakah in general. La'aniyim, any extra goes for aniyim. Ma'aseh ani, if you collect for a specific ani and you have extra, la'aseh ani. Ma'aseh hamesim, anything that's extra for mesim is lemesim. You're collecting for burial, for different things, for shrouds, different things, for chevra kadisha. It goes to the chevra kadisha. Ma'aseh hameis liyarshav. This is very important, guys. Keep this in mind. If you collect for a specific mace and he has extra, it goes to his yarshim, which is big of a chiddush, right? Big of a chiddush. But it doesn't go because after all, you didn't collect it for the yarshim, you collected for the mace. You leave it till Eliyahu. You build a nefesh, you build a tzion, what we call it tzion, a tombstone on for him. That's what you use for it. So any extra, you collect it for the mace, spend it on the kfura. It should be bekavidik. Okay, now going on that din of being Maisa mace, that you're saying that it goes what? It goes liyarshim. Let's say you collect for a mace and you think he doesn't have any money, and lo and behold, they find a little sava and says that you go ahead and check the safe deposit box or check under my mattress. You find a few $1,000. Some people are prone to do that. Many people, they put away money for they know the kids at Sabrachin to go ahead and throw on the kids money. So they want to make sure the day of the kfura, there's always money set aside. So therefore, you find out that he had money set aside, yet you collected money. So that money would also go to his yarshim, even though he doesn't need it. Amal le Ravidi, the chutra, name of a place, chutra. What are you saying? They only mechavim for him. They weren't mechavim for the yarshim. They're mechavim for him. He doesn't need the money. Says Amalei, so it says Rabbi Yemia, I'm telling you the din. Where do you know it from? This was his Talmud. He goes, how do you know anything? So Tani b'shem Reb Nasan, Moisa Meis Yibonel and Nefesh al Kivra. What do you do with the extra money? Go ahead and put it on his kever. And v'yasle ziluf al gabi mitasa. They would go ahead. They would sprinkle aromatic wine in order to go ahead and stop the smell of the mace that was putrefying. So they would go ahead and sprinkle that. That's what you should do with it. Tani, ein poidin shavoi b'shavoi. Don't switch it. If you connect for one specific guy, don't use it for a different guy. Then go from talis b'talis. You collect a money for a talis for one ani. Don't switch to another ani. But if the parnas in the tzibur does these things, don't go ahead and make a macha. Because when you give to a parnas in the tzibur, it's with the tanah. You understand he's going to use it for which way it's necessary. So it wasn't connected for a specific guy. You should go ahead and use it. I have a gevia. I make Baruch Hashem from my teachers, Erev Yontif. And I specifically write it tonight in that you should be that discretion that I'll use it for different things if I have to. So let's say I have a big I collect for Chazdei Leif. Let's say they get packed. I'm able to get bonuses, no Baruch Hashem. So again, but it's a tonight that you should have. Tanei B'Shim Yom a nice in the fashos at tzaddikim. Do not make this is fascinating. Do not make the fashos at tzaddikim devreim hein zichroinam. Their words, they are the zichroinam. In other words, you don't have to go ahead and put it tzion. Their words are what is zichroinam. So since I have my friend Eli Katz and he misses his Rebbe, Reb Sruli, so I have to digress with a little raid bite on this inyan. L'chayra, you go to any gadol, you'll find a nice gezunted tzion on his keva. We're saying over here you don't have to put it tzion because in fact their words, what they left behind is in fact it's tzion. That's the greatest That's the greatest legacy that they live. So if Moshe has a tshuva, the tshuva is in Chelik Dalid, it's tshuva nun zayin, and it's sifkat and hay in the tshuva. I went through the tshuva, beautiful tshuva. They bring that the Rif was from the Gedolei Rishonim, the first person to literally take the Gemara and codify what's halacha l'maisim that you find in the back of the Gemara. He had a tzion, and on the tzion, they wrote about the Rif. So it's Keneged Yerushalmi. This is brought down la halacha. So how do they explain that? So if Moshe wanted to say, what will you possibly say that the Rif went ahead and he put it up there because it's an anav? In other words, he didn't hold himself in tzaddik that he needs that they were, when they said that the zichron of a tzaddik is his words, they weren't speaking about me. That's what he would say. That's why he put it up. So Moshe says, in Cain, why would he write all the stuff on it? In other words, if you're such an anav, right, Rav Ayaleib Steinman, Zechat Tzaddik Kodesh L'Bracha, wrote on his keva nothing. Right, he wrote nothing on his keva. Elamah. So Rav Moshe concludes, in fact, that this is even though halacha is, it's not asa to. It's no issa to do it. The male is no issa to do it. We find, in fact, we know going to a tzion of a tzaddik is usually a very, very good thing. It brings us. It can be very emotional. I went on a trip. I went to, I spoke about my trip to Meshech Chochma, and the way we stopped at Radin. I had a tefillah there in front of the Chavetz Chaim's keva, like mamish 10 Yom Kippurs in one. It was unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. So again, I think that Tzion is another reason why you'd have it Tzion, because it arouses the people who are there to go ahead and be elevated in trying to get their bakashas answered. So these are very famous words. Rabbi Shimon Gamaliel, "Ein nois in the fashas that tzadikim divreim hein zechroinam." Their words there, they're zechroin. They wrote that by my Chabad Toiv, Rav Matis Blum was nifta. They wrote that they wrote the lashon. They sent out. Ein nois in the fashas that tzadikim divreim hein zechroinam. V'yochanan havi masmich v'ozol aol. Little agadata guys, right? Hard words, but agadata. Rabbi Yochanan havi masmich v'ozol al Reb Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Yochanan was being supported and walking along on Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Eliezer, it's Rabbi Eliezer should be, saw him and he hid. Mikamei. For Omar, and said Rabbi Yochanan to Rabbi Chia, right? Halein tarti mili hadein bavla ovid bey. This Babylonian Rabbi Eliezer did two things to me. Choded leishoel b'shloimeh. First he didn't greet me. But choded mitmar, and he hid from me. So Amalei, Rabbi Chia told him, Rav Yaakov, Amalei Rav Yaakov Bibi Lachar told him, Kach nehigin gabon. This is the way the Babylonians are. The Zeira leishol b'shlumei the Rabba. That the Zeira, the young ones, they didn't ask the shalom of the Rebbe. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan, he's not going to ask from you. The ina noig b'kayamin. They noig in Mekayim the pasuk ruuni na'orim nechbu na'orim. They see they hide. The shishim come with amdu, and the old ones come when they get up and they stand. Amalei ma'ulam evet kamei da'adurit salma. So they asked. They wanted to tell Rabbi Yochanan that, you know what, don't be so makbid that he didn't greet you. So he asked Rabbi Yochanan, what about going in front of a tzlema, an Avodah Zarah called Adura? His name was Adura. So tzlema Adura. What about passing in front of them? So Amalei, Rabbi Yochanan said, Ma at polig yakar, by not going in front of him, you're not going to give him. You're going to give him mat. You're going to give him mat yakar by not going in front of him. In other words, by not going in front shows the chashivas. So if you don't go in front of it, you're going to show it chashivas. Avra kamur, go in front of it for some and poke the Avodah Zarah in the eyes. But you see from the words of Rabbi Yochanan that not going in front is a covet. And the male they showed Rabbi Yochanan that Rabbi Eliezer by not going in front of him is going ahead and giving him covet. So Amalei Yayis, very good. Rabbi Eliezer Ovid Ovid Kamach. It's a good thing that Rabbi Eliezer did not go in front of you, because by not going in front of you, it could be Rabbi Eliezer is showing you covet. For Oid, another instance, Ovid Hababloid Loyomish Maitzim Mishmei, that they didn't say it in my name. Rabbi Eliezer did not say Torah in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. He didn't say his name. Nichtzu Lefonav Rav Ami Ravasi Amuloi Rebbe Kacha Yemaisim Basic Knesset Shal Tayisim. There was a mice in the base Knesset of Tayisim, the coppersmiths. Nagar Sheyesh Baroishay Glustera. We saw the Nagar going back to Masechah Shabbos, guys. Remember the doorstop? You had a post, and it had on top. It had a knob on top. So the shaila was, as a din of a kli, and it's not muktzah, you can move it. Well, no, it's muktzah. So they had a shaila, shenechelku amid beis, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yaisi, at shekara sefer Torah bechamson. They got so angry. So kara sefer Torah sakadaitach el shenikra sefer Torah. It got angry. For Rabbi Yaisi, it got ripped. V'hayisham zaken echad, Rabbi Yossi ben Kismishmoi, Amar, Timhaniim loy havi beis hakneses zebe beis avodah zara. That this place where they got angry and incidentally went ahead and ripped the Torah, eventually it will come up in Makam avodah zara. Gemara in Shabbos and Kofei says, Kol hakoyes ki lo avodah zara. So, in other words, they're trying to show Rabbi Yochanan, so why are you getting angry? It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Anyway, Omar Timhaniim, so he said, why do you bring me a raya from two chaverim? In other words, they were chaverim. With the Ravami Ravasi, they were chaverim, and they were fighting. That Rabbi Eliezer, they were fighting. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yossi were fighting. They were contemporaries. You're bringing me a raya to me. Rabbi Eliezer is my Talmud. I can get angry at Talmud. It's a different thing. So here comes the pacification. Nicholas, the fun of Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, to pacify Rabbi Yochanan regarding the failure of Rabbi Eliezer not to say something in his name. Amle Ksiv Kashetziva Hashem es Moshe Avdoi Kein Tziva Moshe es Yeshua. The Chikol Diba v'Diba Shal Yeshua Yoshe v'Doirish Hayoy Mekacham Moshe El Yeshua Yoshe v'Doirish v'Yoydim Hakol, and everyone knew She'atarish Al Moshe He. Afata Rabbi Yochanan Eliezer Yoshev Rabbi Eliezer sits v'Doirish Hakol Yoydim She'atarish Al Chahi. So they say, it was unnecessary to say your name because obviously he's saying it from somewhere. So Amalehem, if they make ma einatam yoidim latzas kiben idi chaverenu. So he turned to Rav Ami and Rav Asi and said, "How come you don't know to pacify me like what? Like Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, Rabbi Yochanan my kuli high. Why was he so makbid? Rabbi Yochanan, this is great. This is the great guys. This is the number one Amor in the history of the world. This is the fellow who wrote what we're doing now, besting our teeth on the Yerushalmi. He's the one who wrote it. He's the one who wrote it, right? So my kuli high, Adam Gadol Kazeh, why was he angry? The boy, the Yimu Shmaitz and Mishmei, that he want, why does he want Makbet to say? The Af David Bikesh Alel Rachman, even David Davin, Shnemar, Agura Ba'alecha Ilamim, I should dwell in your tents, Ilamim is Lashon Rabim. I should be protected in the hiddenness of your folds and your wings, literally. Does David have a half meaning that he would live forever? That right? We had this Gemara in Shabbos. I should be zocher that my word should be said over in the Bati Knesses, Bati Midrashiyos, right? And therefore, what? That's the lashon of Svasav Davas Bakever. So David said that. So Rabbi Yochanan wanted to ensure that when you say something b'shem Amroi, it's going to be when a person's in the next world, it's like he's in both worlds because he's dead, but they're still saying his lips are still moving, as we'll see in a second. Shimon ben Nezira b'shem of Yitzchak Amar, Kol Talmud Chacham Sho'imim Dava Alacha b'Piv B'Olam Hazeh Svasav Roich Shosim B'Kever. His lips literally move in the kever. Shnemar v'chikech kiyin atoiv, and his palate is like kiyin toiv, like good wine. Ari, I hope it was good. Doivev Svasim Yishanim, right? That his doivev sifse Yishanim, the slipped lips move Yishanim with those people are sleeping, meaning the people who are nifta. Ma koimer shel anovim, just like a vat of anovim. Kimin shemaniach adam betzboy love, you push it down. Miyad doivev, it begins to swish around. After the same shel tzadikim, kimin shoimrim david varalach mipiyam shel tzadikim. So it's the same merach shemimon bekever. They begin to go edwan and merachish, they move in the kever. Ma hanol aloi, what hanol does he have? In other words, this I know that it moves. What I don't know what we're talking about. So he says the Gemara, very geschmack. By Nazir Oma Kahaden, the Shosi Konditin, like the Kandetwa. There's a word called Kandetwa. Probably Kanditin comes from that. It's a combination of grapes and spices and honey, and it remains in your palate afterwards. Rabbi Yitzchak Oma Kahaden, the Shosi Chamer Atik, some ancient wine that's aged, good bottle of wine. It stays. Afal Gav the Shosi lay time of a puma. Even though you drink, time is still in your mouth. That's the hana of the Torah. My Rosh Hashiva said, I still remember, of Gusman, Zechat Tzaddik Hashem Racha, we were learning the Shach. Shach had a very hard life. Shach lived during the Zera of Cholmeniski, Tach V'Tat. The Meissen, the Marcus Lehman book about the lost princess was his daughter. Shach died at 41 years old. So when we were learning a Shach, Rashiva said 38. He said, the Shach is tight, the Shach leapt. He goes, give a cookie. You learn the words think about it. Every Shach, every Rashi. Rashi's been alive, guys, but he's never died. Rashi never died. Every day we do that Rashi. Until you learn Yerushalmi, then you don't say Rashi. But until then, it's unbelievable. It's the beautiful of the Messiah of Torah, how it keeps on going. Someone says a shmur, the name of the person who said it, Yerabal Shmur Kilu should view the Bal Shmur as if he's in front of him. Shnemar, Ach B'Tzel Misalech Ish. You should see the Tzelem in front of you. Ksiv, Rav Adam Yikra Ish Chasta. Zeh Shakal Adam. It's a regular person who doesn't say it b'Shem Amrei. V'Ishemunim, Mi Mitzah. Who do you find in Ishemunim? Zereb Zira, who was very makbit to say something b'Shem Amrei, and also to always visualize the person that he said in front of him. Dam Rav Zira, less non tzricha chashasha l'shmaitza der sheishes. You don't have to be chayish for sheishes himself to gavra mi pischa. He was a gavra mi pischa. His eyes were always open, meaning his lashon sagina. He was blind, so he couldn't visualize that individual. Amar Rav Zira l'Rav Asi, chachem Rebbe l'Bar Pasya. Did you recognize Bar Pasya? The at shmaitza mishmei. In other words, you're saying that you should visualize the person. What happens if you say Torah that a person you didn't see? How could you go ahead and then visualize the person? So Amalei Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mishmei. I saw Rabbi Yochanan who said it in his name. So there's a Messiah. You're always seeing the person who said it. Amalei Rav Zira Rav Asi. Chacham Rebbe L'Rav Da'at Amar Shmaitza Mishmei. Did you see Rav that you said it in his name? Amalei Rav Ada Barava Amar Mishmei. Rav Ada Barava said it in his name, and I saw him. Ein Dar Shein Ba'Leit Sani Kedar Shel David. There was no dar that a bunch of scoffers like David, sarcastic people, cynical people, people who wanted to get under David's skin. What did these horrible people do? They went to David's windows, and Amrullah David, they'd say, David, when will we be able to go? Everyone knew that David couldn't build the Beis Hamikdash. The Nevuah went out. So they would shepherd David, they would shepherding him, right? When are we going to say that? But even though I know the Mechavan to go ahead and anger me, in the end, I'm going to be very happy. I was happy when they said to me, Beis Hashem Nelech. Why? You'll see in a second. When your days are full, you will go lie down with your fathers. So in other words, David did not want to die early. David did not want to die early in order to facilitate the construction of Beis Hamikdash. And Hashem assured him, guess what? Even though it won't be built, and I want it, I'm going to fill your days. You know why? For the following reason. I'm going to David. Yomim Shleim Mani Moilach. I'm going to count Yomim Shleimim. So David was nift on Shavuos, right? And he was born on Shavuos. He's going to go ahead and give 70 years that he got from Adam Rishon. He's going to go ahead and fill. Yomim Chaserim, and not days that are missing. Klum Shleima Banecha Yibna Beis Hamikdash El Hakar Karbanas Sibor. The whole reason Shleim is building Beis Hamikdash to bring the karbanas of the Sibor. Chavu Tzedako Mishpat Shata Oisa Yosem Karban. The tzedakah mishpat that you do is much more important to me than any carbon that he will bring. Shnemar asa tzedakah mishpat nifchal Hashem mizbeach. The Gemara in Shabbos Lamed has the lashon tovli yomechad she'ata yoshev va'osik b'Torah. It's better to me one day that you sit David and learn Torah. The elef oilek she'asid shlomo bincha la'akal fanei al gavim mizbeach. More than the 1,000 oilers that he's going to bring in mizbeach. Hajjalach mitzafin shkolim. Hajjalach mitzafin shkolim. Hajjalach mitzafin shkolim. Guys, tonight we're getting to the bottom of Ches. I'll give you. As a Rebbe, don't get antsy. We're getting to the Ches. We're going to get to it. Says halacha based. We're going to do there, and then we're going to call it an evening. Okay? Because again, this is today's plot. Ches is today's plot, so we'll be only half a block behind. Okay, says the Mishnah. Halacha al Nashnisim. B'shloisha prakim b'shana time mes alishka. 3 prakim the year they did shumas alishka. Again, the coins were kept in a lishka, and they would go ahead, as we're going to see that from the next Mishnah, they would go ahead and take 3 baskets. And in each basket, they would 3 times a year, they would go ahead, fill these baskets up and use them. So they didn't just take, a little bit. There was what truma. Truma, guys, means separation. They would separate from the lishka. The Paras at Pesach, we're going to see that means 15 days before Pesach. Paras at Seres, 15 days before Shavuos. Paras at Chag, and 15 days before the Chag. Rabbi Akiva. Incidentally, these are the groinois. These are the times they would go ahead and take off Maisa Behema. Maisa Behema is taken off from we're going to see Machloikas exactly from the animals born that year. We're going to see exactly what dates these are. And when you would get close to these times, the Rabbanan said you can't eat from your herd until you take off Maisa. So since these times of years, you're going to go ahead and need animals to be eaten. So these are the times they would go ahead and do the hafrasha, if you will, of the Maisa Behema. You'd put all your animals in a corral from that cohort. You'd come out, the 10th animal, you'd take red paint and smack it on, and they keep on coming out. And each 10th one, you'd smack it on. It had a din of a kachim, and you could eat it. It has the same kedusha of a Pesach and a Bechor. Okay. Ben Azai says not on the Granos were not on 15, 15, 15, but when were the Granos? The Granos were Be'es B'Tisha B'Adar, the 29th of Adar, the Echad, the Sivan, the first day of Sivan, B'Chav Tes B'Av. Rabbi Leza, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, Be'echad B'Nisan, Be'echad B'Sivan, B'Chav Tes B'Elul. The first days of the month. V'lam Amru B'Chav Tes B'Elul, V'lo Amru B'Alef Tishrei, Pnei Shehu Yontif, because that's Rosh Hashanah. V'Yesh Lasis B'Yontif, L'fikach Yitiminu B'Chav Tes Elul. They went one day before. So you have three different shitas. You have either 15, 15, 15 before of the Yom Tovim. Ben Azai, you have 29, 1 and 29, and the other ones you have 1, 1, 29. Amra Avu, call hach the 20 paris. When anytime you see Lashon, paris is palga. Guys, kedei achilas pras. What does that mean? Half a loaf of bread. It's an example of the Lashon of paris. When you see the Lashon of paris, it's half a loaf of barley bread, right? That's achilas pras. Palga de lamed yoim, that half of 30, which is 15 days, kaid lamayid, shadashim el chasayim. Behin granos, these are the granos of Ma'aseh Behema. What's the reason they would go ahead and do the granos this time? These are the times they gave birth. This is the explanation I just gave you, right? You should have the animals available. Again, the Rabbanan, you weren't at these times of the years, you're like similar to the Omer. You're not able to eat the Chodesh until the first day. So similar to these times, they were not able to go ahead and eat the animals without taking off the Ma'aseh Behema. You shouldn't come to Baal Ta'acher. There's an issue of Baal Ta'acher of delaying in bringing a carbon of that you make. So therefore, they want the animals available. So therefore, they would do it at this time. Anyone who's Masha is Tevel. This could be speaking about what anything that you take through over Baal Ta'acher, over Baal Ta'acher. Tamin Tanon. We learned over there. Okay, guys, now let's not mix up. Listen up well, because I did this and I messed it up when I prepared this. Do not mix up the granos with Ma'aseh Behema. So, for example, there's a din called Chodesh and Yashan, right? So, for example, Ein Tarmin min HaChodesh al Yashan. You're not able to take a truma from one crop to another crop. So we know Tes Tu B'Shvat is anything that bloomed before then is considered the previous year. Anything that bloomed afterwards is the next year. You can't take truma from one on the other. Good. So these dates were about to be given. They are the day that's set. These are the animals that are able to go into the corral together. The goyrin is they would go ahead and physically separate them. This is discussing which animals are in the same cohort, the same group, if you will, that belong together. Got it? Got it? In other words, this is like Tu B'Shvat for the animals. Good? Here we go. Says the Gemara, any animals born before Elul go in the corral. Anyone born at Elul, they go to next year. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, the first day of Tishrei, not the first day of Elul, the first day of Tishrei. That animal born before Tishrei and the animal born after Tishrei, that's the demarcation line of which goes into the corral together. Ben Azai Omer, Ha'alulim, the ones that are born in Elul, misasrim if they atzmon, they you take meiser off themselves. They're a different, literally pun intended. They're a different animal. They really are. They don't go to either one, as we'll see. Rav Huna, time of the Reb Meir. Why does Reb Meir say that you go up? Reb Meir says is Elul, right? Reb Meir said is Rosh Chodesh Elul. Good. Why is that Rosh Chodesh Elul? Ad kan heim mismatzos. In other words, the question is, when exactly are these animals born? The question is, when exactly are these animals born? So now, until that time, Rosh Chodesh Elul, the animals they continue giving birth. Lele min hayishanos. These are small animals. Let's go 5-month pregnancy. If you do the math, right? Nisan, Nisan Sivan Iyar, Tammuz of, that's 5 months. So that is the previous year, right? Starting from Nisan, that's the previous year. Now, Mikan ve'elech, anything after Elul, hey mischilas leile min hachadashos. They're from the animals that were born They're the animals that were born, so you can count 5 months from there. So therefore, they're two separate cohorts. Rabbi Yossi ber Rav Bun b'shem Rav Chuna Taima de Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, who say that what? That you go after Nisan. The Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, they say that you go after what? Go after Tishrei, excuse me. Lavshu Karim Hatzain. The Karim, the meadow, was covered with animals. The sheep mean giving birth. Elo habechiros. These are the ones that give birth early. Va'amokim yatfu bar, and the valleys, they're cloaked with food. Elo hafilos. They're the ones who are pregnant later. So the ones bechiros are pregnant before Nisan. The other ones are pregnant after Nisan. Yisra'uhu af yashiru elu ve'elu neflasim l'dilas. I said therefore they go back all together. They're born. They all go in the same thing together. The ones that are born before in Tish, they said Tishrei, right? They said the ones that are born in Tishrei. So we're going to put all of them together. As long as they're born in the same year, there are ones that are late, there are ones that's earlier. We don't care. Amar ben Azai, Hoyel ve'elu oimim kach. Since some say Reish Chodesh Elul, the Elu oimim kach. Some say Reish Chodesh Tishrei. So you elulim is asim the atzman. The Elul ones will be separate. In other words, I have Remeah saying the Elul is the new ones. I have Rabbi Elazar of Shimon saying Elul is the old ones. Guys, listen, right? Remeah said Reish Chodesh Elul. Good. Meaning Elul is the next year. Good. Rabbi Elazar of Shimon, they said no. They said Tishrei. So you have a mix in Elul, like there two shitas. You have a mixture. According to Remeah, it's new ones. According to Rabbi Elazar, it's old ones. Says Beis Shammai, you know what I'm going to do? Since it's a suffix, they will go into the corral together, as we'll see. Haketzad, listen to this. Noilad loy behei ba'ov. Now, not hey ba'ov. I think it's like hey. 5 animals are born in Av. Vehei Elul, and 5 animals are born in Elul. Vehei b'Tishrei, and 5 are born in Tishrei. Amit starfin. They won't go ahead and combine. Why? Because the Av and Elul will be together. The Av, Elul, and Tishrei, they're not mitzdarif. The Elul ones might be Chadash and be mitzdarif with Tishrei, or maybe they're Yashan and they're mitzdarif with Av. So therefore you can be mitzdarif together. Again, one more time. The Elul ones might be Chadash. So they'd have to be mitzdarif with Tishrei, which are the new ones. Or maybe they're Yashan and they're mitzdarif with Av. Therefore I can't put, again, you have 15 animals. You want 5, this one, 5, and this one. I don't know where to put the Elul guys. Right? Therefore, they have to go separately. Guys, 5 Tishrei, 5 at the end of the year in Av, mamish 10 months later, it's going to be what? It's going to be in the same corral. So it's very fascinating. They can be born in such close proximity. Guys, I have an Av and an Elul, right next to each other. And then I have a Tishrei. You're not going to be able to start with any one of them because you're misupik. Look at my fingers. You're misupik in this Elul. Is this Elul this one or is this Elul this one? Since I don't know which way to go, nothing. Conversely, if I have a Tishrei and an Av, they're going to be in the same year. Fascinating. That's the shita of Beis Ben Azai. Now the Gemara just goes ahead and digresses to discuss Ben Azai figuring out who Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, who is Talmidim. Where do you have a Rebbe being machriya between Talmidim? Usually you have a Talmud that's machriya between Rebbe. Over here we have the great Ben Azai, who is a contemporary of Rabbi Akiva, going ahead and figuring out Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon. Look how he did Talmidim. So the Gemara is going to discuss that now. Ben Azai machriya al divrei Talmidav. Is Ben Azai being machriya on the words of his Talmidim? Rav Yirmiyah Rav Mesham b'shem Rav Shmuel Rav Yitzchak shekei nechaku alaha avos ha'olam. They're the avos ha'olam, these great Tanoim who argue about this. Uman ninu avos ha'olam. Who are they? Tan Rav Yoina Kamer Rav Yirmiyah Rav Shmuel Rav Akiva. So it wasn't Rabbi Ben Azai being machriya between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon. It was him being machriya between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. Those are the heavy hitters. Those are already that he can be machriya. So I say Meres. Now, when he didn't refer to him as Rebbe, so I say Meres Ben Azai Chaver v'Talmud Hayid Rabbi Akiva. He was a Chaver Talmud. In other words, there's a Talmud and there's a Chava Talmud. In other words, he's a colleague. Because in Tema Rebbe, if he's his Rebbe, is Barnash Omar Rabbi Hoil ve'elu Omru Kach ve'elu Omru Kach. In other words, he uses pronouns, right? He's using pronouns. How would he use a pronoun for his Rebbe? Rabbi Yavim B'Shem B'Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Shamala Min Hada. Over here, I'll prove to you that Ben Azai was a Talmud Chaver of Rabbi Akiva. Amalei Ben Azai to Rabbi Akiva Ala Cholkim Banu Mitztarim Ela Shabos Lachlik Aleinu Es Hashavim. This is a Gemara discussing a Gemara in Yesh Neuchlin in Baba Basra. You know, you have a mother and a child. There's a pile of rubble falls on them. If the mother dies first, then the child inherits. If the child dies first, then the mother's family inherits. You have to know exactly who died first vis-a-vis inheritance. It's not negatus Gemara at all. But on that, Ben Azai said, Al Shabbos Laflik Aleinu Anos Hashashavim Zlois Meres Ben Azai Chavet Talmud Ulu Rabbi Kiva because in Tema Rebbe At Barnash Shamal Rabbi El Shabbos Laflik Aleinu Es Hashavim. You know, you're going ahead. You're going right. You're going to right. You're going to go ahead and be machlik Aleinu saying on us. He's not a contemporary. So all he did was just simply prove that Rabbi Ben Azai was even though Rabbi Ben Azai says he's a contemporary, he says I need kli b'shum. Everyone's a kli b'shum except that Kareach. They wanted to say that he's referring to Rabbi Akiva. Okay, anyway. Tamin Tanon, Kol Anoldim Me'echad B'Tishrei Ad Chav Tes Be'elul. We just learned any animal that's born from the first day of Tishrei, guys, to Chav Tes Be'elul, the whole year. There you go, whole year. Hari Elu, these are mitztarfim. They will go ahead and be mitztarif, like Rabbi. This is like Rabbi Leza and Reb Shimon. It's like Reb Shimon. Chamisha lefnei Rosh Hashanah, v'heila achar Rosh Hashanah, ein mitztarfim. But you get to Tishrei, guys. Again, according to Reb Meir, it's Rosh Chodesh Elul. Here it's Chav Tes Elul. So again, it's a cutoff point. You have 353 days, right? They're going to be the same year. 2 days apart, different year, right? If it goes from Chav Tes to the base, it's apart. Chamisha lefnei Rosh Hashanah, v'heila achar Rosh Hashanah, ein mitztarfim. Now, however, don't make the mistake. If you have one before the goyrin and one after the goyrin, hari elu mitztarfim, they would be mitztarif. Because again, the goyrin doesn't decide that goes into the corral. That's the day it's born that decides it goes into the corral. The goyrin only. The goyrin is only where we physically separate it. But Einachinami, right? They go in the same corral based upon, again, anyone is born before, we possibly seem to be before Tishrei and after Tishrei. Now, we're as I spoke at earlier, there are different criteria for when something is considered part of a previous year or part of the next year. So, for example, right? You guys remember that in Kedushin, Elon Shava, Esrik Shava Elon, remember that at the beginning, right? This is this Gemara, that's the same thing. So now, do you go after there? The Gemara is, do you go after the Chanata when it blooms or Olakita when it's gathered in? So it's very geschmack. So trees go after Chanata when they bloom. They go after bloom, and certain grain goes after when it grows a shlish. So we want to say that Maisa Behema is dissimilar to both. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yossi, Hada Amid, Maisa Behema loy asu isa like chanot. We don't make it like trees, Tu B'Shvat, that if it blooms before Tu B'Shvat, it's the next year. Blooms after Tu B'Shvat, it's the next year. The previous year. Blooms after Tu B'Shvat, it's the next year. V'loy kishlish. Nor do we make it like what? Like Zeroyim, that you go after a third of its growth. Anything that grows a third of its growth, that's the criteria of which year it's in. Because ain't taimik chanot. If you're going to say it's like a chanot, listening kol hamu barim, then you should learn kol hamu barim. In other words, guys, chanata, it's in existence, but it's not in the world. So the parallel to the animal will be pregnancy. When the tree blooms and you see the beginning of the fruit, it's like the woman blooming, right? Right, Mali bloom is heavy with seed. There's some book about that. So now that you go ahead and that's the corollary between what? Between Chanita, and you should say that kol mubarim be'echa b'tishrei. Anyone's that's pregnant before Tishrei. Ad esem b'tisha be'elul till the Chavtes Elul. It doesn't say that. It says anyone who's born. Ein tema kishlish lisni kol hanoldim ad esem b'shnayim be'elul. Oh, now here's a little on this. We know that an animal can be eaten right away. However, it can't be bought as a korban until it's 8 days old. So Maisa Behema, right, even if it's born, it's not in the world till it's 8 days old, right? Miyoma Shmini Vahola, from 8 days onward, you could eat the animal. So it should say, if it's going to go shlish, it should say, Kol ha noldim at esim v'shnayim elul, because then you'd be saying 8 days before Chavtes, right? Because that's when you can use the animal. That's what you'd be saying. You can use the animal then. Okay, so therefore, it's not like that and not like that. Rav Simi b'shem Rav Bibi Rav Chia kishlish asu I saw. We'll make it like a shlish, like Rav Shimon. We'll make it like a shlish, like the das of Rav Shimon. Dam Rav Shimon mechus zman nichnas adelis aser. Now, mechus zman means it's too early to bring us a korban. Does it go into the corral? Says Rav Shimon it goes into the corral. So if that's the case, then even if it's born in Chavtes, you're going to put it in the corral. So therefore, you're not locked into saying like Rav Yosi that it's Rav Yosa that it's not. You don't go after Leda. Taka, you do go after Leda. If you go after Leda, it should be when it's born, which is really Chav Beis until Chavtes, right? And Achinami Chavtes would work also. You can't eat it. The fact that you can't bring it as a korban machnas vis-a-vis putting in the corral to be part of the cohort that you can go ahead and take off my samehema, that it does work. Rav Mana now comes to deal with Rav Simi, who wants to say that it works. Rav Yosef's does not work, right? That it doesn't work on Chavtes, and he should have said Chav Beis. He has a time amalei. At Amrid Hador Milsa, you say this thing that what that it's like that it's like Reb Shimon. I'm adding words. Amalei in. So Amalei Hatomatanon we learned Ben Azay Omer Halulim is Asrim La'atzman. The Alulim, the ones in Elul, since you're Mesupik, whether they go to what back to the previous year or the next year, you're going to take off Maisa. Afilu Noilad at Esim Betisha Be'elul. Islachol Meimar. Ben Azai, so Islachol Meimar, he said he should say up to what? Up to 29th Elul. In other words, you should say the whole month of Elul. Islachol Meimar Ben Azai Krev Shimon. You're going to say that Ben Azai says of Shimon, he says all Ilulim, right? He should say up to what? All Ilulim. Now it's not true all Ilulim. It should be only up to Chav Beis Elul. Ben Azai is saying the whole month of Elul. So if you're going to tell me Mechusas Man goes in, you're really telling me that he holds like Rav Shimon. It's fair to say that he holds like Rav Shimon, like the Rabbanon. What do you have to say? Like the Rabbanon, you would leave it till the next year. Famous Asrin in Bnei Shnasan, and they would go with the whole next year, previous year. Kain ata Omer al de Ben Azai. Menichem legorin haba, they misasin in bnei alulim. Not like Rav Shimon, but you leave it to the 15 days before Adar. You said before what was the Ben Azai Shita? The 15 days before the first gorin that shows up, that's when you would go ahead and use it. So you're not locked into saying that Rav Yossi that is correct, that like Rav Shimon. Ein achinami, it doesn't all like Rav Shimon. He said the whole Elul. And he didn't say Chav Beis, and he really means you're going to go ahead and put it to the next cycle. You're going to put it into the next cycle. Rav Chia, so I say Meres, Yomim Sha'Bechor Mechusas Man Bahem Oilun Lo Toich Shnasai. You have to eat a Bechor in the first year. When do you start counting the first year? When has the locha of a Bechor, or when it's born? So Zosa Meres, from this Gemara we see that what? That it's when it's born, right? So Mechusas Man Behem Oilun Lo Toich Shnasai. Rav Mona, Rav Yoina, Abba, Shamalom Min Adah. What did you hear? Listen from this pasuk. Kol Bechor Yivaled Hazocha takdish. Takdish means you should make holy. Now we all know that you don't make the bechar holy. It's Petarechem. Hashem makes it holy. So what does takdish mean? Okay, Tzad, it's time to teach me Neshas Leidasa at Moina Shana. From the you're making you have to say it's kodesh, not to create the kedusha. To say it's kodesh from the time it's born. So we see from here that the time it's born, that's when it's kodesh. I thank you all for listening. I wish you all a good Ma'id.